Hangata re sa rate, jwalo ka bareki, re dula re shebane le dipapatso ka mehla le matsatsi. Ho tswa ho di-billboard hohle mmileng, ho ya ho dipapatso mabenkeleng le ho di-social media kapa di-SMS. Dipapatso tsena tsohle di a re hohela, mme ho ka ba thata ho iphapanya dintho tse kang ditshepiso tsa ditheko tse tlase le dintho tsa majabajaba. Na ebe papatso tsena di molaong? Na ebe re tlameha ho wela lerabeng la mabenkele ana? Ho bohlokwa ho lekola tsela eo re sebedisang tjhelete ya rona. Ho bohlokwa ho tseba tshebediso e ntle ya tjhelete hore re tsebe ho etsa rands with sense. Ke Rands with sense. Lenaneo le batlang hore ma-Afrika Borwa ohle a ele hloko ditsela tseo ba sebedisang tjhelete ya bona. Kajeno, re bua ka dipapatso le hore di ka bapala karolo efe tshebedisong ya rona ya tjhelete. Marketing ke lentswe le akaretsang maqheka le ditsela tseo mabenkele a wa sebedisang ho rekisa thepa le dihlahiswa tsa bona. Marketing e akaretsa dintho tse kang dipapatso, thekiso, ha mmoho le tsela tseo re fumanang dihlahiswa le thepa eo re rekileng. Marketing e sebedisetswa ho hohela bareki.
The main channels of marketing is what we call offline and online. Offline would represent radio, television, and billboards and print and magazines. Online represents newsletters, social media, mobile phone advertising, online advertising, which we call display advertising, and such.
Marketing has one of the most profound effects on people's spending. What happens is they see the brochure and they think, oof, I can't live without that. Giving into that impulse purchase. People need to be careful with marketing so that they don't give into that impulse purchase.
Le ha maemo a moruo a hlobaetsa, re ntse re tswela pele ho sebedisa tjhelete bohlaswa, mme ditsebi tsa marketing di tseba sena ka botlalo. Mona Afrika Borwa, unsolicited marketing kapa tsona dipapatso tseo o sa di kopang ke ntho e tlwaelehileng haholo. Ke makgetlo a makae o fumana SMS kapa mehala ho tswa ho kgwebo kapa lebenkele leo o sa le tsotelleng kapa leo o sa le nehang tetla ya ho letsetsa?
Unsolicited marketing is a huge issue that faces consumers because ultimately what it is us as consumers receiving unwanted communication at times and at instances when we don't need that communication, and also communication that we haven't asked for.
Whether it be unsolicited or not, an SMS campaign that finds its way onto your phone is because somewhere along the line, your details, whether it's through FICA or whether it's through even registering your mobile phone, somebody needed your details and somebody needed to know where you lived and somebody needed to know where you worked.
I have encountered unsolicited market. Well, it's when you get phone calls, especially from the network that I use, and then they tell you that we have this promotion and that, and sometimes I don't see how that could benefit me because I try to save money, not spend more money. So I just tell them that I'm not interested, and I know it sucks because it's their job and all of that, but I'm not into spending a lot of money on things that I don't really need.
When I encounter unsolicited marketing in South Africa, I will pick up the phone and I'll put it down again when I hear it's one of them. So I don't want people calling me.
I have experienced unsolicited marketing, but I don't know, I can't really, I find it awkward to be on the phone with that person because I want to say no, but I also want to be nice. Because half the time I say no because I can't afford it, not because I don't want to go for it, but because I just simply can't afford it at this stage of my life. So it's awkward most of the time for me. I wouldn't just deny the person, but I just want to be like, I want to say no. How do I say no in a nice way? And that's why it drags on. Let the person talk, and I let the person talk, and I'm like, actually, that was a nice conversation, but I can't afford this, so bye.
Bophelong o fumana melaetsa phone kapa mangolo a reng o ka fumana 20,000 ka jeno 30,000 ka jeno ha o hloka o ikgalemela o tla bo sa lo dinkile ndi tla phamisa philo ba hao e se ka rona le tšhelete ngata o iphumane o so reka dinto tse tsamayang tšhelete eo hantle philo bo ka se kgone bo sustain ka se bo keep jwalo kana go teng because ke sekoloto ka e ka tshwantse o patala so ke bothata bo rena le bona lefatsheng la ka kwana
na ebe ke eng se re hohelang ho sehlahiswa seo re batlang ho se reka kapa setlamo seo re batlang ho ikenya ka hara sona?
There's a whole mindset around the psychology of consumerism. The shops obviously cater to people's weaknesses. If somebody's feeling like they don't have a lot of confidence, if you walk into a shop and you see something beautiful and there's some kind of slogan that says, this is going to make you feel great, this is going to make you get a better social life, then we tend to buy into that. So I think the people who are most vulnerable to that are people who are looking for things outside of them to make them feel happy or to fulfill them, as opposed to having a strong sense of self and knowing who you are already and being quite sort of content with who you are. So not looking at making yourself more beautiful, more attractive.
So in most cases, the things that influence people to spend so much money on clothing are your blogs, your Tumblr blogs, your Instagram pages, which is basically social media in general, your Twitter. And pictures now are the thing, like a person would wake up one day, get dressed, go to work, and get there and take a picture of what they're wearing, and their hashtag outfit of the day. And then once they do that, I would also feel like I want to do the same thing. But my outfit has to be really good for me to do that. I have to compete with the next person. I have to look at their image and see what brands they're wearing, see what kind of things that they're wearing, and try and match up to that. So it's basically me wanting to level up, wanting to be at the same level as everyone else in society and what they're doing.
Ho ngatanya amang amabaka ai bat ba iphumana ba se ba reka ntse tse turang tse ba sa di kgone ke ka baka la lifestyle.
Marketing taps into that lovely little thing called a need and a want center. Marketing gives that little want person a little bit more airtime in your mind. It says, I really need or I want that. When actually, in fact, you probably don't need and you don't want it. Things that you need to do is you need to ensure that your financial situation is sorted out. The wants is something that can wait until your financial situation is sorted out. Just because something looks attractive in a marketing brochure doesn't mean that you need it or you need to have it.
A lot of people can be motivated by spending too much money because emotionally they're not feeling good about themselves. They've had a stressful week, maybe their personal relationships are strained, and they see shopping as an easy way to feel better. So it's an emotional, quite reactive way to feel better about oneself. So it can become quite mindless, in fact. When you just rush out and you buy something and you feel better, but that's instant gratification. So that's obviously not going to help you in the long term, where you look at your bank account at the end of the month and you've spent so much money on expensive clothes that actually you haven't even worn. But in that moment, on that day, they made you feel good. They gave you that shopper's high.
We all know what's the point in having something that you desire when materialistically it looks cool, but you can't afford it. It doesn't have the same appeal anymore. It actually starts becoming quite a shocking piece that you've just bought. So be careful of that. You know what I mean? The desire for something doesn't necessarily mean when you get it, you're going to love it. So advertisers will push cars at you at monthly premiums from $4,000 onwards, and you might go, wow, I could actually afford that. But you can't afford the maintenance on that car. You can't afford the wheels on that car. When the tires run out, when the shocks go, where are you getting that money from to sort that problem out? The monthly installments is just so you can get going. And we need to watch out for that. We need to watch our money and be careful with what we purchase.
Re ile ra botsa ma-Afrika Borwa hore ke ditsekemelo dife tse tummeng hara bareki.
As a consumer in South Africa, I am very, very strict of places where I buy my items. Firstly, I look at the price. The prices, I do comparison. And after that, I look at the quality. So for me now, it's price more important than quality.
For me as a consumer, the thing that make me go to the store is a nice decoration of the store, the quality of the product that is being sold in the store. That's the most important thing. Also, if I know the store very well, or if I can see the people are friendly, or the people that are working in the store, I tend to like the store.
Like when I see a 50% off, I'll go straight directly into the store. Spend, that's the time they get me to overspend, so yeah, I have to go for it, and it's always like that.
Ha re khutla papatsong, re bona hore dipapatso di ka re hohela jwang hore re sebedise tjhelete ya rona bohlaswa. Re le amohela hape ho SABC2. O shebelletse Rands with sense. Lenaneo le ikemiseditseng ho thusa ma-Afrika Borwa ho laola tjhelete ya bona ka makgethe. Kajeno, re ithuta ka marketing le hore e ama diqeto tsa bareki jwang. Marketing ke tsela eo mabenkele a lekang ho susumetsa bareki ho reka thepa le dihlahiswa tsa bona. Mabenkele le kgwebo tse ngata di na le se bitswang marketing strategy. Mme dipapatso di wela ka tlasa sena. Ke ka hoo re bonang dipapatso ka mehla hohle mo re yang teng. Ha re boneng hore ma-Afrika Borwa a ikutlwa jwang ka mekgwa eo mabenkele a bapatsang dihlahiswa tsa bona ka teng.
I absorb advertisement from billboards, from the radio. I absorb them from like the internet, so when I'm on the internet, a lot of things will pop up. I absorb them from YouTube ads, actually mostly from YouTube ads. I don't watch too much TV, so YouTube ads mostly. Like the ads in the beginning, they're just selling things, and I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Not that I would buy anything of it, but I usually just check out the ad list.
As a consumer in South Africa, I prefer when people send me an SMS or they send me an advert on Facebook. That works. It's convenient. I don't always have time to read magazines and check the newspapers and stuff, so it pops up on my Facebook and I see it and it works for me.
I think as a consumer in South Africa and being slightly older now, I see myself as not as susceptible to marketing. I'm kind of set in my ways and knowing what I want. So I try to avoid any form of advertising on the radio or media. I just skip it.
The kind of advertising, definitely TV advertising works. That speaks to me. And then don't bombard me with too many posters and that kind of thing. I like seeing it when I'm there, when I want to buy it, yeah.
For me, cell phone and social media advertising is better because if you notice, most people, they don't watch TV anymore. Like you only have that short period of time, late in the evening or in the morning. So if you have a cell phone, you check on social media advertising, it works better.
Re ile ra buisana le setsebi sa rona ho utlwa ka maqheka ao bo ramabenkele ba wa sebedisang hore hohela le ditsela tsa ho qoba ho wela lerabeng la bona.
What advertisers normally do is that they will try and advertise or persuade or indoctrinate even trendsetters. So a certain brand of shoes will resonate with a trendsetter, or a brand that's struggling will go, who are we going to talk to? They'll talk to a certain tribe, or they'll talk to a certain collection of people that they can market to, and then direct it at the trendsetters. So that we call them early adopters. So those guys will put on those trainers and they will be infiltrating into the tribe's market or their space and what will happen is that a trend will be set because other people would like to be like that.
The reason retail companies have control over consumers is it's because they study people's patterns of doing things, how people do things, and they use those to sell to them, whatever it is, whatever product or service that they're selling to them. You know, they basically study how people do things, what are the reasons that they're doing this, why are they buying certain items at a certain time of the day, why are they here at this time of the night, and they use those to basically advertise to them.
Marketers use color and music, you know, all sorts of things to get your senses going. So colors can play quite an important role. The color red we associate with sales, and it just makes us feel excited. Red is also the color of power, so people feel more powerful and in control of themselves, actually, if they see certain colors. Other colors which are more calming and soothing, which would probably be better suited to a spa, a day at the spa, would be the more tranquil blues and greens.
What works is just put some stickers and say sale, items on sale, 20% off. I might go in and just see if there's anything that I like. And also going back to the things that I wanted to buy in the first place. And if there are things that I wanted to buy and that I like that are on sale, then I buy them.
What would make me go into a store would be a sales sticker or 10% off, or actually just a mannequin being dressed really, really well, like if the mannequin is dressed really cool, or the style suits mine, like street style, or urban style, or Rastafarian style, or an African style. So anything that suits my style would make me go in. Even if I don't have the money, I'd still go in to look, because you never know what you're going to find.
Marketers have many emotional tools at their disposal to pull people in to shop. It can be sales, it can be promotions, special events, anything that makes somebody feel that they're taking part of something special and exciting will pull people in. The promises of having a more fabulous life, a more exciting life, a more fun life, all of that can actually entice people to shop and spend money.
The way marketing and advertising agencies and retail companies use lifestyle to sell to consumers is basically by finding out what the consumers really need. Well, not necessarily need, what they want, because it's wants, it's not necessities, it's not things that they cannot live without. It's luxuries. So what they basically do, it's creating an idea of what it is that would help you do something that you maybe can't do at this, at the moment, and say to you, basically, if you want to do this at a certain time in your life, this product will get you there.
Ons het 'n groot en baie bedrywige en entoesiastiese verbruikersomgewing geskep. En dit is asof dit 'n siklus is. Alles moet groter, alles moet beter. En materialisme speel 'n groot rol daar, want ek werk vir my geld. Ek verdien my geld sodat ek dit kan spandeer, sodat ek kan beter voel oor myself, sodat ek 'n groter kar kan koop, sodat ek lekkerder kos kan op die tafel kry. En daai waardesisteem word aangevuur deur eksterne goed soos die media en soos die bure en so voort, maar dit kom van binne af. Dit is lae self-esteem baie keer. Want ons wil goed voel oor onsself as gevolg van eksterne druk.
Giving into peer pressure by means of friends or marketing or something like that can have a drastic impact on your finances. Rather make sure that you set up a proper budget, that you stick to that budget, that you've got your savings in place, that you don't give into those impulse purchases that can just get you into a worse and worse position. Trying to keep up with the Joneses and getting into debt to keep up with the Joneses is not going to work.
Ha ho kgutla papatsong, ho utlwa ha batsi ka sena. Empa ha jwale, ha o batla thuso ya ditsebi tsa rona ka mathata a hao a tjhelete, e ya ho website ya rona, randswithsense.co.za, kapa o ye ho Facebook page ya rona, mme o re phetele pale ya hao. Hopola, hore o tlameha ho ikemisetsa ho phetela babui ba rona pale ya hao. Ke yona fela tsela eo re ka kgonang ho thusa ho etsa Rands with sense. Re le amohela ho Rands with sense. Lenaneo le buang ka taolo ya tjhelete le ho fumana botsitso maemong a rona a tjhelete. Ka jwalo re bua ka maqheka a marketing le dipapatso, mme re bona tsela tsa ho qoba ho ba mahlasipa a borakgwebo. Ke ka hoo ho le bohlokwa ho tseba ditsela le nako e nepahetseng ya ho sebedisa tjhelete ya rona.
The difficulty is, if you do give into that marketing and that impulse purchase, you could potentially get into a debt situation. You can get into a situation that you're buying things that you can't afford. Or alternatively, that things that are absolute non-negotiables on your budget, like your medical aid or your life insurance can't get covered because you gave into that type of impulse purchase. Trying to keep up with the Joneses and getting into debt to keep up with the Joneses is not going to work. You're going to be in a debt position. I can assure you that in a couple of months' time, the Jones person is not going to help you get out of that debt position. They're going to be happy with their debt position and probably can't afford their debt position while you're struggling with your own debt. Avoid that in order to just sustain a lifestyle or a dream. Rather make sure that your financing and your budget is in place.
Tjhelete e fumaneha ha bonolo mo South Africa. Ene e etsetsa batho bothata ba hore ba iphumane ba le dikolotong. Hobane ba ifumana ka mokgwa credit card, ba ifumana ka personal loan, ba ifumana ka overdraft, ba ifumana ka 1-day loan, ba ifumana ka 20-day loan, kore e ngata fela tse. Ka baka la hoba e fumane ha bonolo. Ba sa kgone ho ikgalemela, ba tle ba sa le banana ba na le hlonolo ha ba ifumana. Athi o ntse o tetebela ho feta sekolotong. A se ha ka lo hlonolo, empa e le hore mohlomong lebitso la le letle e le mokgwa o tlo qetelang o le silafeleditse ha o sa hlokomela.
Marketing ke maqheka a sebediswang ke mabenkele le dikgwebo ho hohela bareki hore ba tsebe ho reka dihlahiswa tsa bona. Mona Afrika Borwa, unsolicited marketing kapa tsona dipapatso tseo o sa di kopang ke ntho e tlwaelehileng haholo. Ke makgetlo a makae o fumana SMS kapa mehala ho tswa ho kgwebo kapa lebenkele leo o sa le tsotelleng kapa leo o sa le nehang tetla ya ho letsetsa?
Yeah, I often am bombarded with unsolicited marketing in the form of cell phone SMSs and also the drafted voice clips. You know, you answer a call and someone starts spewing. So I delete them and cut them off. Not interested.
Yes, I have received unsolicited marketing from many insurance companies or people that want to sell you something and you don't know where they got your number from. So yes, I have.
Okay, I've encountered unsolicited marketing, and I feel like they should do more research into who they are calling first than getting unnecessary calls as a consumer.
But for calls, for me, I always ignore calls because they also use private numbers a lot. So whenever I see a private number, I don't even answer the phone. So normally, I don't like someone who's gonna market me over the phone. I don't even know the product. Then you call me telling you're selling this type of insurance or whatever. I don't take those. So I normally tell them I'm busy, but I never go through because of so many past experience and stories.
I don't think it's fair to be subjected. It's a nuisance. And I think it's an invasion of your privacy. I mean, how did they get your details from? Where did they get it from? So.
Jwalo ka bareki, ho bohlokwa ho tseba ka marketing le hore ditokelo tsa rona jwalo ka bareki ke dife. Ditsebi tsa rona di ikemiseditse hore hlalosetsa dintho tsena.
The Consumer Protection Act allows us as consumers to assert our rights on privacy. So what do I mean by that? The Consumer Protection Act in fact dictates certain times at which a direct marketer can contact a consumer to engage in direct marketing. So those regulated time periods are Monday to Friday between 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening. So anything before or after that is strictly not allowed because it will be against the regulations that have been issued. On Sunday and public holidays, no direct marketing is allowed. And on Saturdays, direct marketing is only allowed between the hours of 9 and 1 p.m. Currently, telemarketers, direct marketing organizations obtain our information from a myriad of sources. At the moment, there is nothing in place which prohibits them from accessing our information. That will soon change once the Protection of Personal Information Act, or what is commonly referred to as the POPI Act, becomes implemented. The POPI Act will now make it more difficult for direct marketers to obtain the information of consumers. The basic premise of the POPI Act is that consent will have to be obtained from a consumer in order for direct marketing to take place. So at this point in time, it might be a little bit unregulated, but as soon as the POPI Act becomes implemented, things will change. It is anticipated that the POPI legislation will be fully implemented during the course of 2017. As advice to consumers, we often say that when you enter into a contract, be very careful of the little blocks that you tick. Often, one of those blocks is giving a supplier permission to share your information with other service providers and other companies.
The fact is, if you give that company permission to send it on to somebody else, it's not hurting you. What happens is that if that company sells that information, that's how they're working. Try and forget about it. The big problem is that the more companies that are finding out about you, the more your mobile phone is going to beep. Now that's where the problem starts coming in. Because what you don't want to have is invasive advertising. What you want to have is controlled, systematic conversations between brands and you.
And often consumers ask, but how on earth has my details been obtained by the supplier? It relates back to the contract that you've signed and the block that you've ticked. And often we don't read what we're actually agreeing to. And often our information is sold or moved on to other entities by virtue of the fact that we've agreed to our information being circulated. I think it's important to remember that when consumers are being spammed by marketers, is to be aware of the fact that you have a right to demand that your details be taken out of circulation, and demand that you no longer be contacted, because the Consumer Protection Act affords you that opportunity. So if you're contacted by a direct marketer and you don't want to get any more information from them, then tell them that. Say to them, from now onwards, I'm making a request that my details are taken out of circulation and that you refrain from contacting me. Make sure that they give you written confirmation that you've indicated to them that you no longer wish to be contacted, and that is one of the easiest ways in which to refrain from getting direct marketing. There's another option. Many of the direct marketing groups belong to the Direct Marketers Association. They have an opt-out register in terms of which a consumer can load their details on the Direct Marketers Association's website and say, this is my name, this is my ID number. I would want you and your organization members to refrain from contacting me. I don't want any direct marketing from your organization.
One of the main things that is covered in the Consumer Protection Act around marketing is that we need to have an opt-out option of direct marketing. So if you're receiving emails, if you're receiving SMSs and you didn't sign up to receive this information, or you don't want to continue receiving these subscription newsletters, you should have the option to opt out. So on an SMS, it might be that you reply stop, and they will take you off their mailing lists, or at the bottom of an email, you should be able to click a link where you can unsubscribe, and again, you will be taken off the mailing list.
Consumers who wish to record their details with the Direct Marketers Association can visit their website at www.dmasa.org. There will be a link where you can record your details, and you can also ascertain which companies are in fact members of this association, and in that way you would be aware of companies that contact you, whether they're members of the DMA or not. The first thing that a consumer should do if they are contacted by a direct marketer after asking not to be contacted is to make contact with the management of the respective supplier or the direct marketing company, and indicate to the management that you have asked not to be contacted and you have subsequently been contacted by them, and insist that they refrain from contacting you in future. If it happens again, the suggestion would then be to lodge an official complaint either with the National Consumer Commission or with a provincial consumer protection office, which is located in each of the 9 provinces in our country. 2 of the main marketing practices that we find in our area is something called negative option marketing, and the other one is referred to as bait marketing. So negative option marketing basically means that a supplier will contact a consumer and say that unless you tell us that you're not interested, a contract will come into existence and a product will be supplied to you. That is illegal. It's been outlawed in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, because obviously as a consumer, you need to be able to apply your mind and make the choice as to whether you want to enter into a contract or not. It is not up to the supplier to determine that you will be entering into a contract unless you indicate that you won't. The other issue is bait marketing. Bait marketing is basically designed to get consumers into the store to purchase a special deal, and if that deal is not available, to purchase something else. In terms of the Consumer Protection Act now, if a supplier makes available a certain product, there has to be an indication as to whether that product will be available for a certain period of time and whether there will be a limitation on the number of deals or specific products that will be offered going along with that deal. And the supplier will be obligated to provide the product to the consumer in terms of the conditions that they've stipulated in the advert.
Jwalo ka bareki, re hloka ho ba sedi, mme re hloka ho tseba ditokelo tsa rona ha re batla ho etsa Rands with sense. Re tswela pele ka sena ha re kgutla papatsong. Ena ke Rands with sense. Lenaneo le re rutang ho tshwara le ho laola tjhelete ya rona ka makgethe. Kajeno, re ithuta ka marketing, mme re bona hore e ka re ama jwang jwalo ka bareki. Hangata ha re reka dihlahiswa, ha re na tsebo e tletseng ka theko ya rona, mme re qetella re qhekanyetswa ke bo ramabenkele. Ka nako e nngwe, bothata bo ka qala ka dipapatso le ho se badisisi dikontraka tsa rona hantle. Ho bohlokwa ho tseba dintho tseo o tlamehang ho di ela hloko ha re nka qeto ya ho sebedisa tjhelete ya rona. Ha re boneng hanyane hore dikontraka di sebetsa jwang, e ka ba dikontraka tsa mehala ya thekeng kapa tsa insurance. Ke eng seo re tlamehang ho se ela hloko ka dikontraka jwalo ka ma-Afrika Borwa?
One of the unfortunate practices that we see in the marketplace is something referred to as puffery. It's sales talk, in other words. So we find often that especially vulnerable consumers are offered everything under the sun in order to conclude a deal. So it would be offering a product with specific perks, specific characteristics, or specific specifications of a product. So a consumer will purchase the product, sign the contract, and later on realize that what was offered to them is actually completely different to what they've ended up with.
Well, I do have financial contracts. I try as much as I can to read the fine prints, especially when it comes to the terms of payments and all of that. I try to read them. I've had a bad experience with the contract, but that was back then when I was still very young. There was a promotion, people were promoting a funeral cover insurance thingy, and they told me that this is just a survey. So nothing is going to happen to our account and all of that. We're not going to deduct money. And a month later, I get a debit order saying that someone took money from my account. So that wasn't fair.
I have had bad experiences with regards to cell phone contracts. Well, I didn't understand the package deal of anytime calling, because they tell you that they give you a certain amount of minutes and SMSs, but they're not clear enough when they say that after those minutes, then they bill you. Yeah.
I do have a financial contract, and it's with my cell phone provider. obviously with my bank for the bond and with my insurance company for the car. I never read the fine print when I sign a contract. Almost never. If I would read it, I presume I would understand it, and if I don't, I'll just ask someone. Yes.
Yes, I certainly read fine print in contracts. I'm from sort of a background like that, so I make sure that I don't commit myself to anything, and I think one has to be very careful with that. So yes, I am very careful with that.
I've had a bad experience with not reading the fine print. I think that with it being so small and so cumbersome, and with the legal jargon being used, we often find ourselves falling into, high interest rates and, debit orders going off, with varying amounts and that kind of thing.
I do have financial contracts, and yes, I do read the fine print. Because I can't just sign stuff and go into stuff without knowing what it's really about. I need to make sure.
Re ile ra kopa ditsebi tsa rona hore di re neye tlhahiso leseding ka dikontraka le se bitswang fine print.
When it comes to the fine print in contracts, we always say that the onus should be on both parties. For a consumer, there's an obligation to make sure that what's been offered to you during the sales pitch actually matches up with what is contained in the contract. So all those fine print details, make sure that you understand them. If something's been offered to you during the sales pitch and it is not contained in the contract, ask questions about it. Alert the salesperson to the issue and say, but you offered me a return within 60 days, but there's no such provision in the contract. If the salesperson says to you, don't worry about it, we'll deal with that if the situation arises, be very afraid, because once you sign that contract, those terms and conditions are going to be what applies to you. So as a consumer, you definitely have the obligation to make sure of the terms and conditions that are contained within that contract. We also advise consumers that if they're unsure about terms and conditions, obtain some advice. Speak to somebody that has a bit of knowledge about contractual matters, about legal matters. The Office of the Consumer Protector, there's one in every province. Contact them if you need some advice. Take a walk to their offices, bring the contract along. We're there to offer guidance and assistance to you as well. As far as the suppliers are concerned, they're obligated to make sure that a consumer's attention is drawn to negative consequences and implications of contractual agreements. So if there's something specific that's going to have a negative impact on me as a consumer, for example, there's an escalated interest rate, for example, in the contract, then it needs to be drawn to my attention specifically. I need to make sure, or the supplier needs to make sure that I am aware of that provision. Section 49 of the Consumer Protection Act, in fact, says that where there is a negative implication for a consumer, that must be brought to the attention to the consumer, and they must be alerted to it, and they must acknowledge that specific issue that is contained in the contract. One of the bits of advice that we want to give consumers, unfortunately, the majority of consumers are overexcited when they enter into a transaction. The end goal is to obtain the product at all costs. Without doing the homework on the actual contract that is going to be signed. So the main idea in the consumer's mind is to lay their hands on the product that forms the basis of the contract. This can have disastrous consequences, because you might have the product as soon as possible, but over the next 5 or 6 years, you're going to be faced with a contractual situation that is detrimental to your own circumstances. And that detriment has been brought about by you not taking the time to read and evaluate and understand the contract. So again, we urge consumers to, before getting too excited about getting hold of the product, take the time to read the contract, to understand the contract, and ask questions. There is no such thing as a silly question. Each question is relevant. Even if you don't understand the definition or specific word in a contract, it is your right to ask for clarity on any aspect within that contract. And as we've said before, if you're uncertain about a specific contract, seek guidance. Consumer Protectors offices are located across the country. We also have the National Credit Regulator, which regulates the credit area. You're welcome to contact the NCR as well for guidance and assistance. One of the biggest problems that consumers face when signing a contract is signing something that they are not familiar with or that they don't understand. So they end up agreeing to specific terms and conditions of which they have no understanding. That leads to disastrous consequences for them, because it could mean that there's an escalated interest rate, there's unfair terms and conditions in it, they've given up some of their rights that they may have in terms of the Consumer Protection Act.
The advertisers are not wanting to make your life better, they're wanting to make their life better. There will always be hidden costs. There will always be terms and conditions in the contract that they don't really want you to read. This is just the nature of how most advertisers out there are operating.
In South Africa, we must note that both written and verbal contracts are considered as binding. The obvious pitfalls with verbal contracts is the agreement with the specific terms and conditions that's been agreed to between the two parties. It will always be an element of doubt that creeps in as to what has been verbally agreed to if there's a dispute between the parties. Whereas with a written contract, everything is contained in writing, the clauses are clear, the terms and conditions are clear, and it is accepted that both parties have agreed to the written terms and conditions of that particular contract. With a direct marketing agreement, if the agreement has been recorded telephonically and it is then reduced to writing, there is an assumption that the written agreement is on the same basis as what the recording has been done. If there is a doubt as to that, the consumer will have the right to ask for a copy of the recording to make sure that the eventual written agreement is in line with the telephonic agreement that's been entertained between the two parties. If there is a contract that was initiated verbally and is then ultimately captured in writing, the written agreement would be the basis on which the consumer could take an issue further, because the written agreement will be deemed to be the agreement that's been sanctioned by both parties, because the signatures would have been appended to it. It is important for consumers to assert their rights as far as the Consumer Protection Act is concerned. In certain instances, we have seen cases where, although the Act provides that a consumer can cancel a direct marketing agreement within 5 days, certain companies refuse to cancel and honor that provision as contained in the Consumer Protection Act. We then have to fight the battle on behalf of the consumer and alert the supplier to the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act and ensure that they honor the obligation as is mandated by law. In the majority of matters dealt with by the Office of the Consumer Protector, we have been successful in assisting a consumer with cancelling a direct marketing agreement. Often it is necessary for us to alert the marketing company as to the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act and the obligation on them in terms of the Act to in fact alert the consumer about their right to cancel a direct marketing agreement within 5 days. Sometimes we see that the agreement does not provide for this cancellation clause, and we then assist the supplier in ensuring that their contracts are brought up to speed.
Ho molemo ho tseba ditokelo tsa rona jwalo ka bareki, hobane ke yona fela tsela ya ho ithuta ho etsa Rands with sense. Ena ke Rands with sense. Lenaneo le batlang hore batho bohle ba fumane tokoloho maemong a bona a tjhelete. Ka jeno re buisana ka marketing le dintho tseo re tlamehang ho di ela hloko jwalo ka bareki, ha mmoho le ditokelo tsa rona hore re tsebe ho sebedisa tjhelete ya rona ka makgethe. Ha ho utlweng dikeletso le tlhahiso leseding ho tswa ho ditsebi tsa rona.
As the Office of the Consumer Protector, we also urge consumers not to be pressurized or forced into entering into an agreement because it's the final deal. The deal will end in 1 day, the deal will end in 50 minutes. Specials are always on the cards. It is better to take the time to do your homework, evaluate the contract that is going to form the basis of the relationship rather than entering or jumping into a contract that is going to have disastrous consequences for you. Without evaluating the specifics of the contract, you might end up in a situation that will become detrimental to you as a consumer. So take your time. As we say, prevention is better than cure.
I think to avoid some of the big marketing traps, we can do some practical things, like we can unsubscribe from certain mailing lists, so we're not bombarded by special promotions or events from shopping centres. We can block pop-ups from occurring on our screen. And obviously we also need to invest time and energy into what personally makes you happy.
The consumer out there works very hard for their money. They want to make sure that their money works for them and that they don't just give in to the impulse purchases. That's not going to make a material effect on their life. Rather, make sure that they're in a good position financially before they just go away and start spending money. In terms of financial savvy, what consumers need to do is make sure that they budget properly, they stick within that budget, they don't give in to impulse purchases, that they start saving, they pay off their debt, and just be generally wise when it comes to their money.
Hari amuela tšhelete re phelang ka yona re losa maphelo a rona a ditšhelete. Re tla bona le ka moso bo hlakileng bo botle and very little social ills. Ka mantswe a mang le bana ba rona ba tla bana le bophelo bo betere. Ho qala ka lapeng di hlakile bophelo bo senang dintwa go na le kgotso. And then ka nqeng ha ba re tsela pele re setšhaba re phela ka dikoloto re phela ka buisale re phela ka ntho re senang yona. Re fumana re le setšhaba se leshano. Re fumana re setšhaba se senang kgotso because ho hloka tjhelete ke mohlodi wa ntwa tsena kaofela lefatsheng. Re tlo phela re tlo fumana re phela ka ho kadima ena phela ka ho kadima ho phela ka stress se isang ntweng se isang social ill kaofela. Re tlo fumana re sena nako ya ho bana le bophelo ba ka lapeng ba quality.
Re se re fihlile qetellong ya lenaneo la rona la kajeno. Bekeng e tlang re shebana le ditsela tse ding hape tseo re ka kgonang ho iketsetsa tjhelete ka tsona hore re tsebe ho etsa rands with sense. Ke nna Mmarona Kgwele. Salang hantle.